Hello and welcome everyone. We're going to get started in just about 30 seconds. Great. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So hello and everyone, welcome to our first session of our Communicating with Confidence on Vaccination webinar series, co-hosted by the World Health Organization and Sabin Vaccine Institute's Boost community. For this first session, we'll be focusing on meaningful conversations to address vaccine hesitancy. And so my name is Liz Colway. I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Applied Learning at Sabin. And I have the pleasure of being joined today by my colleague, June Ryan Orbina. June has extensive experience improving vaccination demand and uptake through various roles at the World Health Organization. His experience covers strategic and risk communications, community engagement, infodemic management, and developing and implementing evidence-informed strategies and interventions to improve vaccination trust, confidence, and uptake. We're very fortunate today to have him lead this webinar. Before I hand it over to June, I do want to share just a few housekeeping reminders on the next slide. So this session will be taking place in English today with simultaneous French interpretation. Please be sure to toggle to the correct language channel on your Zoom panel. You'll also have the option to view the presentation in your preferred language, and that can be found at the top of your screen. So you'll see two tabs that are labeled English and French. Next, we ask that you please mute yourself to limit any background noise and feedback. We are hoping to have some time at the end of the session for Q&A, and at that point, we would welcome you to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. But we do very much encourage you to submit any questions, comments, or thoughts in the chat and further engage with your fellow peers and the presenters today. So with that, I think that's all the housekeeping on my side. So I'm going to hand it over to June to go through the agenda for today's session. So over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Liz, and good morning, good afternoon, or perhaps good evening to our participants. We have around 60 of you in the room this afternoon. And as Liz has mentioned, this will be part one of a three-part webinar series on meaningful conversations to address on communicating with confidence on vaccination. So this afternoon session will be on meaningful conversations to address vaccine hesitancy. And at the end of this session, our goal is to have a better understanding and appreciation of what meaningful conversations are, how these are applicable to our role as health workers, and what are the different techniques that we can use in navigating difficult conversations with those who may be hesitant and nudging them towards vaccine acceptance. So these webinar series build upon each other. So we encourage you that after this session, we encourage you to add on further skills by attending the second and third webinar sessions, which will build on this first session. So for this afternoon or morning or evening, we'll be looking at definitions of vaccination decisions and meaningful conversations. We'll be hearing of your experiences as well. What are the steps in tailoring conversations? We'll have some space for Q&A, although as Liz has mentioned, you can write them on the chat and we'll try to answer them. And we'll have some introduction as well on the different modules that you yourselves can use in your own line of work and how you can tailor these such that you can apply the skills that you have learned here in your own specific setting. So let's start this afternoon's webinar by having some conversation on on what are the most common questions, or what's the most common question or concern on vaccines that you have encountered in the community that you served. So if you can share a short answer in the chat, share the most common question or concern on vaccines that you've encountered. Oh, so we have some answers now coming in. I think Rita's mentioned here that a common question is, are vaccines safe? So I think that's a very common question coming from parents, of course, who are concerned of safety of their kids, or perhaps we ourselves who are concerned also of our own health and safety. Why bother? Why do we need to vaccinate, for example? And what are the side effects of vaccines? Why did you come to vaccinate us? Why is there a need for us to be protected at this specific time? Why can't we just, go on with our lives and not be vaccinated? And there are specific questions which have been listed down here as well, like, do vaccines cause infertility? This has been an age-old recurring question in different settings, if vaccines cause infertility. And what will it make our child barren? And other questions as well. Well, why do you have vaccines for the poor and not for the rich or elite? And this goes beyond usual questions on vaccine safety, but really looking at the role of vaccines probably in shaping the societies that we live or move in. So there are quite a variety of questions that you have listed here, and please keep them coming, because this is our way also of having some feelers on the ground on the common issues that you usually face. But most of the questions which have been raised here, the answers to these have been are available at the WHO Q&A web pages. We can share with you the link later for these pages. And what we'll learn this afternoon, it's not just how to answer these questions, but really the approach, such that we'll be able to build trust and confidence in vaccination as we navigate these difficult questions. So thank you, and just keep your questions coming. So let's start first with this first topic on meaningful conversations and vaccination decisions. And we know that one's decision to vaccinate, one's intent or motivation to vaccinate, comes from a variety of influences. So various influences shape an individual's motivation to vaccinate. So you might have your own level of confidence with vaccines, or who would deliver these vaccines, or the system which delivers these vaccines. But this can also be influenced by our immediate community, the family we grew up with or we interact with, the friends, the social networks we have, who could influence our decision making and our attitudes as well. And when we access health services, we may have a positive experience with vaccination, for example, or it may be accessible for us, or organizations which provide the services are trusted, and these shape our own motivation to vaccinate as well. And there are broader reasons, such as policies, legislation, and availability of funds. But what we'd highlight now, and it's really useful to think of this visual when we think of the different facets that we need to touch on in terms of motivating someone towards vaccinating. But what we touch on now is this green highlighted circle on looking at how systems can help motivate individuals towards vaccinating. If we have health workers trained in vaccine safety surveillance and communications, and this is the goal that we have for the next 3 weeks, where we'll be together in terms of learning about vaccine communications. And we know that this is quite a powerful motivator, because in many settings, health workers are the most trusted influencers of vaccination decisions. And this has been shown by research as well, that when a health worker provides a recommendation to vaccinate, then there's really strong influence or strong push for someone to get vaccinated. So perhaps we can move along as well in the French slides to the next slide. So this is what we are trying to invest on further now, knowing that us health workers are trusted, and how can we leverage on such trust such that we're able to shift behaviors towards more of acceptance. And we know from the daily interactions we have perhaps in the field, during outreach vaccination, or at health centers, that there is a spectrum of intentions towards vaccination. So if we think of a vaccine conversation that we had with someone recently, we can somehow gauge where that person sits on the spectrum. We know that most of people in our communities now are accepting of vaccination. It's the prevalent social norm to get vaccinated, such that when you say that, oh, it's time to vaccinate you today, then more likely a larger number of the community would say, yes, let's go ahead to get vaccinated today. And they're part of the accepting part of the community. But there are those who are declining, who may say that this is not the right choice for me, or it's not something that I would participate in, or I don't find any value of vaccination for me. So right away, they would decline or refuse. So they're in the declining end of the spectrum. But in between, we have those who are hesitant, who may have concerns or questions that they would like to be addressed first before getting vaccinated. And we have come to a point now, I think, that when we say that someone is hesitant of vaccinating, it seems like a negative stigma-laden label already. But what we're just trying to explain here is being hesitant of vaccination is a motivational state. It's something which it may be transient or maybe long-term, maybe which exists because someone has questions or issues or concerns about vaccination. Even I myself have been hesitant, for example, when the COVID-19 vaccines have started to roll out, and I was questioning getting a particular brand of vaccine. So at that point in time, I eventually got vaccinated, of course, and moved towards acceptance. But I, at a certain point, became hesitant as well. So it should be a healthy state, which should be welcomed, such that people's questions or concerns on vaccination can be readily answered and not dismissed. So let's remember that most people accept vaccination. Quite a lot would be on the blue side here, on the accepting side. However, intentions can differ between vaccines. A mother, for example, might approve of, say, a pentavalent vaccine for his or for her child, but may not approve of an MMR vaccine, for example. But nobody's stuck in one position. People can change over time, as in the example I provided, that there may be moments of hesitancy, but that can shift towards acceptance. And then being hesitant may not just be because of the vaccines themselves per se, but this may be because of good or bad health experiences we have in the health services. And this can influence one's position on getting vaccinated. For example, I went to the health center and got berated upon or shouted on, even though I would have preferred to be vaccinated, but the experience itself was negative for me, then that would feed on my hesitancy at that point. So let's try to remember that the vaccination intentions are on the spectrum, and they will use this spectrum later on in our discussion. So we've mentioned about meaningful conversations, and it's really important to drive towards having meaningful conversations with the people we serve. So how do we differentiate meaningful conversations with the, let's say, normal conversations? So meaningful conversations shift from just providing information, sharing outrightly, for example, why vaccines are safe, towards building relationships. It's really having that heart or empathy to care for a person's safety or a child's safety, for example. That's why we're sharing this information. It's really going deeper towards the motivations that we have, such that our goal is really not just to share information, but to build relationships. It's not just a transactional exchange with an endpoint of getting someone vaccinated, but really a discussion where there's a safe space for questions to be answered, for concerns to be surfaced, for empathy to be exercised between the healthcare worker and the one seeking vaccination. And that empathy fuels, furthermore, the trust in which is being built between the health workers and in the health system. And it's not just a one-time interaction, but really thinking of the conversation as a trust-building engagement. So we may encounter that particular parent, for example, in just one interaction, but whatever we say in that interaction would feed on to how that particular parent would, say, for example, recall his or her own experience in the health center. And if he or she feels safe, for example, or heard, such that it's a trust-building engagement. So we're shifting from usual conversations towards meaningful conversations, which are rooted with empathy, transparency, and genuine concern. And if we look at these different principles, empathy, transparency, and genuine concern, these are the same principles which are also the basis for trust to take place. It's important also to note that while we are doing meaningful conversations, that we do this in a culturally sensitive approach. And this is just an additional lens that we would like to share with you, because some of the principles that we would share later on would need to go through this lens if these are culturally sensitive, and how could we adapt these to be more culturally sensitive. And this is something which I believe is really your expertise, because you work directly with people in the field and the communities you serve. You know their local beliefs and practices, and because you understand them, you're able to speak in a way that resonates with their daily experiences. And it's important to note of this when having meaningful conversations. It's important also to note the different power structures, the decision-making dynamics in a community, for example, such that we're able to prepare a community before a vaccination activity. For example, if in a particular community, decision-making comes not just from mothers, for example, but really more of a broader family decision-making process, then we can better prepare the community beforehand, such that we'll have better coverage when it comes to vaccination. And third is avoiding assumptions. We may think of, of common characteristics within a community, but let's remember that each individual has his or her own concerns. That's why it's important to listen actively and avoid generalizing based on stereotypes. And in this way, we're able to address specifically the specific concerns and motivations of a particular person to get vaccinated. All right, so let's pause for now, and I've talked for quite a bit, and it's now time to listen from you as well, so that you can share experiences on what have been your successes and challenges in communicating meaningfully about vaccination. So you've heard how it is to communicate meaningfully, and to some extent, you may have practiced this in your own settings. So what have been some successes and challenges in doing so in your own experience? So you can raise your hand if you'd like to take the floor, and we can have this discussion for around 10 minutes. So feel free to raise your hand and share. We have one from, we have two actually. So we have, let me check. Okay, we have Fusini Dembele, if you can take the floor. And yes, please feel free to share.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, people who are
Oui,
French
bonjour,
speaking.
bonjour.
Oui.
Mon expérience, c'est au moment du vaccin, de la vaccination Covid. Donc, il y a des gens qui hésitaient beaucoup parce que pour eux, la mise pour pouvoir fabriquer un vaccin, faire des essais cliniques, ce n'est pas du jour au lendemain. Et
trials to take place. And when COVID-19 hit, it took about a year to have vaccines. And so people thought, well, that didn't take much time. And so there was definitely disbelief, because people thought that it was not reasonable to have a vaccine developed so quickly from the manufacturer to the clinical trials. And so therefore, people were extremely reluctant to get the vaccine, because they thought, well, maybe the clinical trials are being done on us, and we don't want to be guinea pigs. And so we faced a lot of difficulties during COVID. And we did explain to people that with the help of technology, scientists were able to come up with a vaccine against COVID. And so the times had been shortened between manufacturing all the way to the clinical trials.
You can shift to the translation by clicking on the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen, and you'll be able to hear the live translation. And thank you very much for sharing. From what I understand very quickly is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, is that there's really information going out on vaccines, because the vaccines are developed and produced at a quicker pace. So questions have come about, and it was important really to address these different challenges in communicating about why vaccines were produced fast and so on. We can entertain one more question, perhaps from one of our English speakers, so that we'll have the. Okay, may I hear from Aliwaitu, Alawiatu, if you can take the floor, please.
Good day, everyone. My name is Alawiatu Usman Ibrahim from Nigeria. So my own experience is sometimes here, especially at the northern part of Nigeria, they have that belief that vaccination can make the child infertile. One, secondly, what they are saying is, why are they giving them vaccination on other diseases while they are seriously suffering from malaria? So there was a time when I went for community engagement meeting at one community. So they have a lot of dropout there. So a vaccination team went there for an outreach, but nobody comes out to receive the vaccination. So the RI, routine immunization officer, he was at the engagement meeting, so he raised that issue. And proudly, the community leaders say, yes, it's his community, and he's very well aware that his people did not come out, and he did not and insist on them coming out. So we now say, can you tell us the reason why your people did not come out while people went to your distance? Because you are at the outreach session, not within the facility, because it's more than 2 kilometers from the facility to that area, almost 5 kilometers. He said the reason why is because if there is one of the vaccine, you don't know which one. Whenever a child is given that vaccine, he will spend the whole night crying. So they don't know what to do, and they are saying you can give paracetamol before or after, but their problem is they don't know even where to buy paracetamol. In that community, that settlement, they don't have even any patent medicine store, not to talk of pharmaceutical chemists. So there is no need for them to receive that vaccine. They don't know which one, so they decided not to collect anyone. So I now intervene, because that time we are doing COVID-19 recovery for routine immunization. So I'm a fellow. So now I raise the issue. Okay, so if that's the case, if that's what concerns you, then can we look at other way? So I now ask the word focal person to explain the six messages. He now explain the 6 messages. Okay too, but in that case, they still have problem with that, how to get that junior paracetamol. So that day we promised that, okay, we are going to provide junior paracetamol, but specifically for Fenta 1, Fenta 2 and 3 only. So it's not easy, because he started doing it. I said, no, allow him to talk, because he need to voice out. So if we give you paracetamol, it's okay, and that's how we resolve the issue. So there are these challenges here and there concerning rejection of immunization. So you really know how to communicate with them, listen to them, and so on. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Alawiyatu. That's very insightful experience that you've shared in the field, knowing the breadth as well as the variety of different issues that have been covered. You know, the long-standing, repeatedly or often repeated issue on infertility, also the issue on why vaccinate when there are other more pressing issues which need to be addressed. And you've highlighted an important aspect as well on community preparation. It's coming armed with messages, but not just with messages, but also in the proper manner such that we'll be able to listen to their concerns and be heard as well. And at the same time, prepare also the logistical challenges which are associated with the needs which have been expressed beforehand. So this is a very insightful experience that you've shared. So I'll just read one more experience, and this time I'll read from the chat. I know there are quite a number who've raised their hands, or apologies because we have short period of time, but probably we can think of another session where we can have more time to listen to all these very insightful experiences. And I'm going to read one here from Martha, saying that there are more challenges than successes recorded from my experience. This include gaps in interpersonal communication skills with vaccinators, work pressure, and gap in information around different antigens for routine immunization. So Martha here highlighted an important aspect as well of strengthening the capacity and the skills of our health workers, particularly in interpersonal communication, which is what we are discussing also this afternoon. Also, how to deal with uh, with having meaningful conversations despite the work pressure, and also the need also for information to be built, for confidence also of health workers themselves to be built such that they become better communications and better advocates of vaccination. So thank you very much for sharing all these. These are very, very, very insightful. So for now, in this second part of the webinar, we'll look at the more practical steps. And some of you have already mentioned some of these. And we'll look at the 3 different steps for having meaningful conversations. And we summarize just these into 3 steps. Step 1 is to presume vaccination and elicit questions. Second is to identify intent to vaccinate. And third is for us to be able to tailor our response. So for us to initiate meaningful conversations, step 1 is to presume vaccination and elicit questions. So we start with a statement assuming vaccine acceptance, then invite for questions and concerns. So starting with a statement assuming vaccine acceptance could sound like, we're now ready to vaccinate. And then we invite for questions and concerns. So do you have some questions before we proceed? Or we can say, oh, it's now time for, say, baby Ricky to be protected with the vaccine. So do you have some questions before we vaccinate him? So why do we need to do this? We do this as a first step because assuming vaccination helps establish vaccination as a positive norm in the community. And then when we open for questions, open for concerns, we provide a safe space or communicate that there's a safe space for a conversation to start. And we can also use that conversation to explore one's intent to vaccinate. So it's really setting the scene and making sure that we establish that this is not a unidirectional communication, but really a dialogue between the health worker and the one who's making the decision towards vaccination. So step 1 is to presume vaccination and to invite for questions and concerns. The second step is to identify the intent to vaccinate. And we go back to our spectrum of intentions for vaccination, which we have shown earlier. And based on their response in the prior step, we determine where the person sits in the spectrum of vaccination intentions. So is the person accepting, or is the person declining, or is the person hesitant? And this is important because identifying a person's intent to vaccinate gives us an indication of what our communication goals are, and that we can tailor our communications, our responses, our conversation based on the communication goal that we want. So what are these communication goals? So we'll go through them one by one. So for a person who's accepting, our goal is for us to be able to address their questions. They've made the decision to vaccinate already. So we should be able to address whatever questions they have, such that we further build on their confidence and their intent to get vaccinated. The goal, of course, is to have them vaccinated today, and for them to have a positive vaccination experience, to make sure that we are dealing with them with empathy, with care, such that they would remember such experience to be something positive. And if ever they'll go back for their booster, for example, or their child's second shot, they would recall such experience and would have, again, an accepting stance towards vaccination. It's important also to affirm their decision of vaccinating, saying that, oh, you've made a good decision for your health or for your child's health by getting vaccinated today. So these are the goals that we have for someone who's accepting. For someone who's declining, our goal is to have a positive interaction. Our goal really is to ensure that trust continues to be built in the conversation, despite us not being able to agree, for example, that vaccination is a decision that one has to make. However, the person who declines a vaccination still has to feel that it's a positive interaction, that he or she does not feel slighted or maybe stigmatized because of the decision, but then ends up with the interaction being positive as well. We can do this by opening the interaction to questions. Oh, we understand that you're declining of vaccination today, but if you have questions, we're always open for you to come back and also to have your questions answered. However, we raise also the awareness of the risks of not vaccinating, mentioning to them what are the drawbacks of not being able to be vaccinated, what are those risks they are facing. And it's important to still maintain trust and engagement, not to engage into a debate or not to engage into an argument wherein you may win the argument, but you may lose the trust of such person. So it's really important to maintain the trust and engagement, despite that person possibly not being able to decide on the day of your interaction to get vaccinated, but later on, they may come back and recalling the positive experience they had with you, then they would later on decide to get vaccinated. So the main theme we have for this afternoon is really those who are in the middle here, those who are hesitant. And these are the conversation goals that we have with those who are hesitant. First, we need to address their concerns, but we need to address their concerns in a manner, in an approach which is through meaningful conversations, which we'll explain later on. Our goal also is for them to increase their confidence in vaccines, in the vaccination process, and also in those who are offering vaccination services. And then we encourage them to get vaccinated, whether in our current interaction or maybe in succeeding interactions that we'll have with them. So if you remember the 3 steps, the first step we had earlier is to presume vaccination and elicit questions. The second is identify the intent to vaccinate. And third is to tailor our response. And when it comes to those who are hesitant of vaccinating, we tailor our response in through 3 different steps as well. So it's 3 steps within step number 3 of the 3-step process that we have. First is to listen and understand. Second is to get personal. And third is to offer help. And for listening and understanding, which is the first step, we need to take time to listen to the person and to elicit information to support us in addressing their concerns while connecting with their motivation as well. So it's important to first ask open-ended questions to further clarify what's the main concern of the person. So ask questions which provide them an opportunity to explain further. For example, tell me more about your concerns about vaccines. So for example, if a parent comes in and says, I'm not sure because I've heard that the MMR vaccine, for example, can cause serious side effects. So we can exercise this principle of listening and understanding by asking open-ended questions, acknowledging their experience, and reflecting and summarizing. You can mention that they may mention, for example, that they're not sure, they have heard the MRR vaccine can cause serious side effects and it worries them. So we acknowledge the experience by saying that it's really natural for you to feel that way. Having questions is normal. As a parent, we would want to keep our child safe. Can you tell me more about what you feel, for example? And that gives them an opportunity to explain further what's their primary concern. So it's important to ask open-ended questions, acknowledge their experience, and to reflect and summarize. Because the tendency we usually would have is once someone says, for example, that I've heard that the MMR vaccine can cause serious side effects and it worries me. The tendency is really to correct that, oh, the vaccine is safe and mention right away why it's safe. But we really need to look into what are these serious side effects and what in these would worry the parent who's asking. And it's taking time to listen and understand, which opens up such conversations, such that a parent or a person's specific concerns would be addressed. Oops. So let's have this poll and see what you think would be the best response to this based on the principles we've mentioned earlier. So we have a poll which is flashed on screen now. For example, at your health center, a mother mentioned the following. They said that the vaccine can cause severe side effects. I'm afraid something bad would happen to my child. What do you think would be the best immediate response? Letter A, that's the wrong information. Where did you hear of that? Letter B, that will not happen to your child, so don't worry. Letter C, having such common concern is normal. Can you tell me more? And letter D, vaccines are safe. Let me tell you about minor side effects. So choose your answer based on these different choices and based on what we have discussed earlier. So we'll have around 30 seconds for you to key in your responses. All right, I'll end the poll now and let's see the results. Okay, let me check, around 67%, around 2/3 said that letter C is the correct answer, which is the correct answer. And around 33%, around 1/3 said that letter D is the correct answer. So let's go through the different options one by one now to see why they're correct or maybe why it's a better way of responding. So letter A, that's the wrong information. Where did you hear of that? And letter B, that will not happen to your child, don't worry, are of course not the best answers, because we are practically here in letter A cutting short the conversation by saying that someone is wrong. Then that's already a judging statement saying that where did you get such information? Why did you judge that such information is correct? So it doesn't open the conversation towards the parents' real concerns. Letter B is also something which comes across as dismissive of a person's concern. The parent comes in with concerns of severe side effects, and we're giving this false assurance that that will not happen to the child. And the parent comes in with worry already, and we're telling that parent not to worry. So that shuts down the conversation. So why are we choosing here letter C over letter D? Because letter D, while a normal response for some of us, it's a response which is grounded on the writing reflex. I really wanted to respond right away but what we know. But if we can take a look here at the sentence, which the parent mentioned, the main concern here are severe side effects. And we ought to know what those severe side effects are. The answer to that is not us answering that that I'd like to tell you about minor side effects. It's really for us to know more what those severe side effects are, such that we're able to determine what are the real questions of the parents and what their motivations are. So the correct answer here is letter C. So let's proceed now. Thank you for participating in that poll. The second part here in tailoring our response after listening and understanding is getting personal. By getting personal, we help identify a person's reasons to vaccinate. We share our own knowledge and story, and we recheck their intentions as well. So by getting personal, we open the possibility of identifying and speaking to the person's motivation. So by clarifying the first step, what really is the main concern or the main question, by having open-ended questions, then we can look further at what that person's motivation is in the first place to get vaccinated. So for example, using the same parent who has concern about seizures, for example, with the MMR vaccine, we can affirm the parents' question by saying that there's really a lot of information out there, and I can see how this can, raise questions. And we can ask using the first point here of helping the person identify reasons to vaccinate. That we can ask, for example, that if I may ask, what would you consider? What made you consider the vaccine in the first place? So we're helping the person identify his or own reason to vaccinate. And in doing so, the person connects with his or her own primary motivation, why he or she wanted the child to get vaccinated in the first place. And what we need to do is to surface that motivation and to further fuel it, such that we use that as a leverage to nudge the person towards accepting. We affirm such motivation. So we can share, for example, that you're right. You're right in saying that the MMR vaccine is important because it protects against measles, mumps, rubella, and their positively negative outcomes. For example, measles can cause serious complications like pneumonia or brain inflammation. And coming from my own experience, for example, as a parent, I choose to vaccinate my child to give them such protection. So this is the part where you share your own knowledge and story. And then we can confirm with them. So are you feeling a bit more confident, or are these helping you feel a bit more confident? And we're checking their intentions. They may say yes, they may say no, they may say that I'm still not completely sure. Then you can further share based on their motivation and also their prior question on the vaccine's safety. So we can share, for example, would it help if we go over what's normal after getting vaccinated and what to watch out for? Probably what are the risks of getting seizures and how do we manage them? And we reach to a point of getting that parent to feel confident about his or her own motivation to get vaccinated. So what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to surface a person's reason or person's concern to get vaccinated. We feed on such motivation, and we use this as an entry point to move a person towards acceptance. And once we're able to nudge the person towards acceptance, then we can further drive such towards action by offering help, which is the third step here, to encourage vaccination, to suggest next steps, and to assist within our own capacity. So for example, we can mention that the benefits of protecting against measles, mumps, and rubella are important, as you have known, and will help keep your child healthy later in life. So how are you feeling now about going ahead with the vaccine to protect your little one, for example? And then we can suggest the next steps that, okay, we can proceed with vaccination now, and we can also schedule your next vaccination appointment if that's helpful for you. So by offering to help, we are bringing them closer to a decision to receive the vaccines and make vaccination an easier task itself to do. So to summarize, we have the 3 steps here. First is to recommend vaccination and elicit questions, to identify intent to vaccinate. And once we have identified the intent to vaccinate, if a person is hesitant, we can tailor a response by listening and understanding. And this is the way of clarifying the questions that they have, what their motivations are. Also, it's also important to get personal, either to delve further into their concerns and also to share parts of our story, which will help them also identify with the decision to get vaccinated and to offer help, which makes vaccination itself acceptable. Here's just a short cheat sheet for us to consider for looking at these different tips, conversation tips, such that we move a person who's initially hesitant of vaccinating towards being more accepting of vaccination. Just to remind us all as well of the different key actions in the spectrum of intentions. As a summary, for those who are accepting, we affirm the decision to vaccinate and provide a positive vaccination experience. For those who are hesitant, we listen proactively and understand and engage with the tailored strategies we've mentioned earlier, which is to listen and understand, to listen, understand, to offer help, and also to get personal. And for those who are declining, we share the key risks and keep the conversation short and positive. Now, we realize that we have gone through here just a quick rundown of these different techniques. And the best way of doing this is really to practice. But we don't have the luxury of time now to really practice and to see ourselves how this goes about in action. But rather, what we have done this afternoon is for us to have a taster of how this feels like. And perhaps if we have interest in the group for a separate session to be able to practice these different techniques and be able to critique each other in a safe space, not in this webinar, but in a different session, perhaps through Boost or through other available opportunities. Can we just have for now a raise of hands who would be interested in a separate session where we can have, say, an hour or 90 minutes of practicing these different techniques? If we have good response, then we can consider such decisions. So maybe you can have some hands raised and see who would be interested in such session. So we have some here who would be interested in such workshop type session, which we can organize later and really have these different techniques come into life by practicing them. Okay, so we have around 10, 11, and yeah, we can speak with the organizers and think of ways where we can do this in a safe space as a community, such that we'll be able to share this as well with the fellow health workers and the communities that you serve. So for now, we'll pause. If people can put down their hands now, and now those who would be raising their hands would be the ones who would want to ask questions at this point. So we have around 8 minutes probably to entertain some questions based on what have been discussed. So we have a question here from Kola. You can take the floor. And I'd like to invite as well our team lead for vaccine demand and behavioral sciences at WHO, Lisa Menning, to join us for some inputs also. So Lisa, please, Kola, please take the floor. Question, yeah.
Ok, merci. Bonjour à tous. Vous m'entendez?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, merci.
Good afternoon. I hope you all can hear me. First of all, thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you for all this information on how to convince those who are still hesitant to get vaccinated. I had a question. You explained that when we talk about side effects, when there are side effects, severe side effects, at community level, do we really need to talk about severe side effects to people? Shouldn't we first talk about the benefits of vaccination? Because people, when you tend to present a severe side effects, then that will push them to refuse vaccination. Second question is, in Africa, it's difficult to reach everyone. So we have to go through other people to vaccinate the population. It's not like we have the opportunity to talk to all the parents about child vaccination, whether it be because of a lack of staff or lack of resources. We have to go through community leaders or other people to have access to the populations. Do you think that community doctors should be involved in a decision to make regarding vaccination? Those are my two questions.
Hey, thank you very much, Paula, for your questions. These are important questions really coming from the field. First is, do we offer information right away on severe side effects? Isn't it important to present the benefits first? Because in some cases, if we give away information, the severe possible side effects, then this might fuel further a person's hesitancy towards vaccination. Well, it's important for us to be able to communicate both the benefits and risks of vaccination. And in communicating the risks of vaccination, we communicate the common risks on what's expected after vaccinating. For example, that the child may get fever, a sore arm, for example, and some body pains. And the way we communicate and put forth the possibility that there may be other side effects which may take place and that the parents would need to observe is that we mentioned that if ever you observe something beyond these normal side effects or something different, and a parent who's taking care of the child would know what's a different side effect which is beyond the normal, then please go to your health center or contact your health worker immediately. So we don't need to go into such detail of communicating what are the different, very, very rare severe side effects, but rather openly communicating the benefits and also communicating what are the normal side effects. And if other effects are observed, then they would need to consult with their health professional immediately. And second is really a question more on social mobilization. It's really more on ensuring that the rest of those in the community who hold power to shape decisions are also engaged in vaccination. So it's important on one aspect to be able to equip health workers with such skills in communicating about vaccination. But in many cases, as you've seen in the diagram earlier in the presentation, that there are other influences for a person's intent to get vaccinated. And it's important also to see what these different influences are in terms of their magnitude in influencing a person's decision. If in such a community, for example, people look up to their community doctors or local leaders, then it's important to equip these different focal points as well with the right messages and the right approach, such that when they come to the health center, they've been primed already by having that knowledge or having that experience that their local leader, for example, is one with them in this decision to get vaccinated. And we further leverage on that and strengthen that decision to get vaccinated when a person who has that background already interacts with the health worker, and the health worker is skilled in navigating conversations or possible questions of that person. So we add up in these different touch points such that we strengthen a person's intent to get vaccinated. So it's true, it's not just the health worker's responsibility, for example, to get skilled, but also making sure that the entire ecosystem where a person lives, where a person moves about, where a person is influenced in, are also engaged with, such that he or she is facilitated towards making that decision towards vaccinating. Yeah. So we can have another question. For other questions, please feel free to write them on the chat, and we'll try to respond to them as well in the community discussions. For now, we'll entertain one more question, and let's have the question by, I'm sorry if I don't get to pronounce the names correctly, but it's from Utara. Utara, if you can take the floor. Yes, go ahead.
Ok, merci bien, madame, de m'avoir donné la parole.
Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm from Côte d'Ivoire, and I would like to come back on side effects. As you know, in rural communities, as technicians, we know the vaccination side effects, because we know that when we inject something in our body, it will provoke some level of pain. But in rural community, they are very afraid of side effects because some parents will think that, well, if the child has got a fever, even a very light fever, they will think that they got a fever because of the vaccination. So we need to anticipate as much as we can on the discussion on those side effects. We need to talk about side effects within the communities. We need to raise awareness on those side effects. Some of them can be directly related to immunization, others can be coincidental, but the parents need to be made aware of what can happen, just so that they know that if something else happens, it might not directly be related to immunization. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Utara, for that very insightful contribution. You're very much correct that this needs to be discussed with the community as well, highlighting that some of these side effects are a normal part of our bodies raising immunity against the vaccine, and that there are ways within the reach of the parents, for example, or the person getting who was vaccinated, in order to alleviate the effects of these different occurrences which may take place after vaccination. And it's important also to highlight that it's not always coincidental, as you've mentioned. What's good here is that next week, on Thursday next week, we'll be discussing more about how to communicate about side effects and these different contraindications and the different contraindications. So we'll be using some the baseline skills that we have learned today on meaningful conversations and build upon that and look at how we can further respond in a more positive way when you have questions about side effects and we have questions about contraindications. So please do stick around and please come back here at the same on session 2 of the webinar series on vaccine safety and contraindications. So unfortunately, we are lacking time, despite I know there are quite a number of questions and quite active participation in our chat group. We'll all take note of this. Thank you very much for being here to listen and to actively participate. We hope that we could provide more space to learn from your experiences as well. But please do come back in the second part of this webinar series on communicating about vaccination. So next week, we'll be focusing on vaccine safety and contraindication. So thank you very much once again. And I turn over the proceedings now to Liz.
Great. Thank you so much, June, for your excellent presentation, and really appreciate all of our participants chiming in and sharing their experiences as well. Like we
Merci.
mentioned,
Priez vraiment partager la présentation avec nous, s'il vous plaît.
Could you share the presentation with us, please, after the webinar?
yes, so we'll be sharing the presentation along with the recording email after the session. And like June said, we'll continue the conversation next week and look forward to seeing you back for that session as well. And yeah, just wanted to thank everyone again. Again, we'll be sharing these resources after the session. So with that, I want to wish everyone a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Merci, merci.
Merci à tous.
Merci à tous. Merci.
Merci. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.